Anemia. This is constant bleeding from intrametrial adenocarcinoma. So basically, when you see bleeding in the human body, you have lost one, integrity of the connective tissue, and therefore you have vascular leakage, or tissue leakage, where you have, and you see that in advanced breast cancers where the acid has literally just chewed off the breast itself, and you have like hamburger sitting there, and then you see the bleeding out of the hamburger, so to speak, and so that capillary bleeds and all this sort of thing. And in one way of thinking, bleeding isn't a bad thing. Now, of course, you can have, I think this poor soul's had some blood transfusions and stuff because too much bleeding, and women know that who have had aggressive bleeding in their periods can make you anemic and things like this, of course. And so this is one reason I created the bleeding formula. And I think it's on the way to her, or she's already got it. I mean, she talks about what she ordered here, but I created that bleeding formula because there are certain, I just love the herbal kingdom. Holy crap, I love the herbal kingdom. But whenever you see bleeding in tissue, there's herbs that are anti-bleeding, you know, and helps the body to clot, helps the platelets and all that other stuff. So it's amazing. God has herbs for every body part, not for diseases, every body part and every function. I love that. So the bleeding formula is for internal bleeding. And I recommend it if you're having internal bleeding problems. But anytime you see cells that have been damaged, that same thing that's damaging those cells, that's what the body is. The cells, the spaces around them, and the two fluids that invade the spaces around them. So when those fluids become acidic, or predominantly acidic, or restrictive in causing the cell's inability to remove its waste. In other words, when that lipid length becomes agglomerative and stagnant, it then impairs the cell's ability to remove their internal acids. Because the cell has organs in them too. They're organelles of a cell, and there's always activity within the cell. That's what you're looking at, is getting nutrients or energetics into that cell so it can affect those organelles and their functions. And you can get into micro levels of those functions. I mean, you can get as small as you want if you want to look to the smallest part of God. So, the problem is that when you agglomerate around a cell, they no longer can get rid of these metabolitic acids. They're intracellular acids, and therefore the cell itself has a corrosive effect going on inside of it. Well, then you got the DNA, RNA, chromosomes, you have all that, which some of it is the genetic chains, and therefore you mutate or alter the genetic chains. And that's how you start genetic weaknesses in a cell. Now you can refurbish that, strengthen that, and change back those genetic memories because they're not physical. The physical aspect of that is the RNA or the DNA and the chromosomes. But the whole thing starts, remember, in the mental worlds. You can't have anything here physically, even the cell, without its mental and astral counterparts. It's blueprint first. Let's use that word. I like the word blueprint because everything has a blueprint to it. And that's, as we talked about that in phantom limbs syndromes, where someone loses a limb but they still feel it's there. At one level it is. At the emotional, astral level, that limb is still there. They just lost the physical side of that. And they can feel, since feelings are very much astral, they can feel that limb there. But this is also true in the mutation of something on the physical side. You also have the inner sides that when you bring that in more powerfully into the physical side, it can alter or pull that chain back. An example of that is atypical cells. When a woman goes in and has a pap smear and she's diagnosed with atypical cells, what does that mean? That means those cells are marching down the road to become what they call cancer cells. And it's just a damaged cell that is being more damaged and more damaged to a point of maybe PNR, no point of no return. However, wherever that gap is, that they move away from atypical to a cancer cell. That using Hilal tea as a douche, within a week to 2 weeks, I've been able to turn atypical cells back again. So at a certain point, cells can rebuild themselves. Not only are cells constantly being produced and destroyed, And you're changing that link in the stem cells anyway. You're changing the consciousness of the body by changing the consciousness of not only the chemistry you're bringing in, but also the chemistry of yourself. So that's changing the consciousness of the cells, and the stem cells in particular as well. So that's how you re-strengthen genetic weaknesses, how you create genetic weaknesses, and how you re-strengthen genetic weaknesses. So when this lymphatic system is agglomerated around a cell, that cell is going to start deteriorating, and then we can pick it and say that's an atypical cell, or at a certain level it's a cancer cell. But you see the acids build all around a cancer cell, and all the lymphatic or lipids that have circulated that cell. And all that it means is that the lymphatic system is stagnant around that cell to the point that it no longer is functionable. Well, they call that a cancer cell. And then they're going to treat that? I mean, you got to fix why that cell became, at that level, destroyed. You can't treat the cell. Oh, you got a cancer, now we can treat you. I mean, the whole thing is idiocy. Idiocy. And to me, very criminal. We have been dumbed down so much. If you watch TV, it's predominantly now pharmaceutical commercials, brainwashing you. They shouldn't allow any pharmaceutical commercials. Why? You know, trying to educate the individual on toxic chemicals which they cannot control. Now, I could have herbal educational commercials that match the pharmaceuticals, and that would be appropriate because herbs are nature, and it educates the folk on how to use them. But when they have a pharmaceutical on any a commercial on any pharmaceutical, you can't do a thing about it. You just go to your doctor and you ask for the pharmaceutical. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then, of course, thank God you have to listen to the side effects to it. And if anybody wants to take a pharmaceutical after listening to some of the side effects, the problem is when you're suffering so much and you can't find a remedy, you're going to grab onto maybe a new pharmaceutical, hopeful that that will be the one that'll help you. Then the problem with that is that there's no fixing the cause, and therefore the cause just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So, we're about fixing causes here, aren't we? Absolutely. So I am forwarding my previous email as it has been a month since being in fruits only, and I keep losing blood from my uterus every single day. My basal temperatures are current 96.8. Your basal temperatures under your arms need to be 98, and that's before you get out of bed in the morning. How does your thyroid run your metabolism or run your body temperatures? Low thyroid is what's called a low oxidizer. Hyper or high thyroid activity is called a high oxidizer. And when we first used hair analysis, we got into the oxidation factors. But so this already is a low thyroid function individual. But indeed, if you have endometrial cancer, then which means that it could be the whole vaginal wall, uterine, cervix, probably heavily stagnant lymphatically, and that sort of thing. And so you're going to see the breakdown of those interstitial levels where you're going to get bleeding out of that. Tumors bleed. And the positive side of that is blood is alkaline. So there is some assistance to the body in the bleeding aspects of that to help keep those tissues from accelerating in its destruction. But the problem with that is that when the kidneys are not filtering and the retention of acids are assured, there's just no stopping it. But bleeding is very much, and I've tied that to the fact that when you start alkalizing and you get high up there, and you've got your lymphs moving and you get high up there in alkalinity, you don't bleed. You cut yourself with a knife and you won't bleed. Women stop bleeding or spot in their periods because everything is clean and alkaline. In an acidic environment, everything is corrosive, bleeding, everything like that. So the more acidic, the heavier the bleed. But when you see heavy acidosis, the next step is either tumors or breaking down tissue or cells, and then those cells are, of course, called cancer cells by the allopathic community, blah, 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 blah. So you don't want to grab fear when you're diagnosed with that, because that then leads you into more adrenal suppression and more problems. You want to go, yeah, I know why. My lymphatic system. And so understanding that lymphatic system and acids and this sort of thing is extremely important. And the Pat, the A&P professor friend of ours, and I did the video explaining to you about cancer cells, why they're called cancer cells, and the whole pathway of metastasized stupidity and all this crap. My blood pressure, when checked before laparoscopy 2 months ago, see below, was constantly 90/60. What should it be? 120/60. 60 is perfect diastolic blood pressure. That means good kidneys. Get too low in the 50s, weak kidneys. And then you don't want really over 70 blood pressure on the bottom, diastolic. But 90 systolic, what does that represent? The adrenal glands, the neurotransmitter production of the adrenals. So I call it the cardiac punch. So when you see low neurotransmitters, you see low autonomic nerve response, because the autonomic nervous system requires neurotransmitters running over those myelin sheaths. And so you start losing myelin sheath integrity. And that's when you see shingles and things attacking. The weak are attacked in nature, because nature gets rid of the weaknesses in nature. Remember, I give the analogy, if you're a mama bird in a nest of babies, and one of those babies are sickly, out it friggin' goes. Because nature can't procreate its weaknesses. Man hasn't learned that. So now we have so much mutation in babies, and my heart goes out to these poor souls that have to be in these mutated bodies. Remember, the individual soul, you can't kill that, you can't hurt consciousness or the soul. But when soul has to be occupying a body that's mutated and things like that, then imagine that world. It's like some of these people have their dogs that are so advanced, they can't see, they can't function, and they keep them alive. Put yourself in a position. But we cling on to physical life like it's some kind of divine thing. Bodies are a dime a dozen. Creation is a grand illusion of all things, because it's just the show. It's the divine expressing itself in individual constituents or individual pieces and enjoying the show. The only way, consciousness, which is one, consciousness doesn't have separation to it. There isn't you and I in awareness. This is why you hear the term the oneness of God, or God the One, or the term omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. There's only the one. At a certain level, you and I merge and become that one. In these lower levels, you and I are you and I. The appearance of. That goes back to the old Jalal Rumi. You remember that story, how he discovered the whirling dervishes, or how he created that? By seeing the divine, seeing everything was God. Every atom, every plant, every person, everything was God expressing itself. And he went into nirvana, went into whirling in the streets. But 90/60 tells you immediately the adrenals are gland. Well, where's the adrenal glands? They sit on top of what? The kidneys. And what role does the kidneys play? The major organs of systemic or metabolic acids. I do see sediment in my urine. That is good. That is good. Keep seeing it. Keep digging till you see a lot of it. However, not as much as your photos. Yeah, but you want to see it. Dig, dig, keep going. You have to. And I notice that I do not sweat while walking in the sun. Well, why? Because look, your basals are 96. So your body's cold, but hot. In other words, if you ever felt cold, some of you, and real hot inside, that's acidosis. You're burning inside, but you're cold, that's the thyroid. And so you don't have enough temperature for the body to sweat. So you can get out in the sun and not sweat. That's not a good thing. Because what's the skin? The third kidney, the largest eliminative organ of the human body. Of what? Blood? No. Of nutrients? No. Of metabolic acids and gases, particularly the gases. Look at sometime if you can see, step back and you'll see the gases emanating from your skin. Since starting my detox, I have experienced a kind of eczema on the back of my legs, which disappeared after 10 days, and pain and swelling in the joints of my right hand fingers. So remember, when you start detoxing, the one thing you're going to notice is everywhere you have a problem. Detox doesn't cause problems. They bring the awareness of the problem to your conscious self. That detox doesn't cause problems, it exposes problems. It's kind of like that whole thing I was talking about the other day about feeding an ulcer. Feed an ulcer, you don't know you have one. Starve an ulcer, and oh my God, give me something to eat. Yeah. It's the old syndrome that, and that's part of detox too, is when you detox, you're going to notice all your little joints and everywhere that's problematic. In 2013, I had some kind of arthritis which was appearing and disappearing in different joints of my whole body. And that's perfect detox when you start to see it moving around and moving around. But remember, most problems are systemic. In other words, head to toe. Particularly, remember, on one side or the other, depending which kidney's down. This lasted for almost 2 years. I did not take any drugs for it. I opposed this treatment. Well, you know what? You got to get with why you feel these things and then kick it up. Kick it up on the top of the mountain or the top of the pyramid, which is going to be water fasting, dry fasting, fruit juice fasting, fruit fasting, that sort of thing. I did not, and this arthritis appeared again this year before the detox, but now I feel more pain. In addition to the itch, damn fungus. Oh, man. I know how that is. In addition to the itch above, I can feel the nodes in the pelvic area, the lymph nodes. See, and this is the thing. When you see a lymph node swelling, that's a septic tank. So when your septic tank swells or becomes full, what's that telling you? Is it a problem at the cellular level, in the tissues, or is there a problem in the eliminative organs? Well, if there's no problem in the eliminative organs, you're not going to see any swelling from those to the cells. Remember, it's just common sense that you're going to see waste from the cells taken to the septic tanks and then taken to the eliminative organs. That is as common in the day as, and that's what medical doctors have to learn. It is why there's so much kidney destruction on this planet, why there's so much kidney, in their words, diseases, so much kidney deterioration. And following that is the inflammatory process and tumors and all the things that go with that. Skin problems, this problem, joint problem, all the diseases they think are just a reflection of acidosis and lymphatic stagnation. Just the location, the degree, that sort of thing. However, they are movable but not large. She's talking about the lymph nodes. Well, that's what you want. But what you don't want is them to stay there. So it goes back to the kidney function again, and I might say a little bit of skin would, So you want to get your basal temperatures up. Generally, herbs for the thyroid should do it, or use a very low milligram glandular. I don't think over 50 to 100 milligrams for thyroid hypoactivity is you need it, because if you kick the thyroid up too much, that controls the rate of metabolism, and that's heart rate and everything else. So, you can get tachycardia out of that. Not it's going to kill you or nothing, but it's just, inconvenient. I have been taking for nearly 3 weeks your lymphatic 3 capsules, the reproductive capsules, and the Heal All Tea. Cannot douche with it because of the hemorrhage. Well, I think it'll help the hemorrhage, not create more of it. But to me, that's why I'm putting the burn and skin salve in a tea. Because to me, when you have a hemorrhage like that, the burn skin salve is more clotting, more healing to that, where the Heal All Tea is, but it also has some plantain, which is also a little drawing, a little astringent. So that's the one thing you wouldn't want in a hemorrhage, is more astringents. But at the same time, I look at that, and you use high astringent herbs in hemorrhoids, and it tightens them up. So you have to look at it a couple of ways. But the Heal All Tea has always worked with this, and I don't know why I would be douching with it if I was you, myself. But the bleeding formula is your key. The female reproductive capsules, you could, because it's a high progesterone formula, meaning it's going to promote more progesterone, which is going to be anti-bleeding. Anything alkaline, which progesterone is your alkaline side. Look at this, the whole thing, you can see that in this issue. You wouldn't give a lady like this black cohosh, because black cohosh inspires estrogen. And estrogen is a minor acid of the body. Well, when you're bleeding, you don't want to inspire more estrogen. The same thing with heavy periods. Those women that have maybe a little estrogen dominance, because that again, acids promote bleeding. Base chemistry is anti-bleeding, anti-spasmodic, anti-inflammatory, things like that. So anything that would promote progesterone or cortisol could act as an anti-bleeding and anti-inflammatory, that sort of thing. But I'm not necessarily saying I would use that one. I probably wouldn't. I would probably use the bleeding formula, no question. The bones, connective tissue, very healing. But at the same time, you've got stagnation of the lymph system. And you're not trying to lock it in place. You're trying to hydrate it and get it moving. So you have to understand that you are going to have some astringent effects in the uterus and the intrometrium and in the vaginal wall and all that area. And so you could still get some bleeding from it. Using the bleeding formula helps stop that. I am afraid I will send the blood back to the uterus. No, not with the Heal All Tea. No. That's the least of your worries. That wouldn't have to be actually. I mean, I don't want to make this sound ridiculous, but that would be a good thing. What you want to do is promote lymph drainage. No matter what you see, you want to promote lymph drainage because it's the lymph that's creating the bleeding. It's the acidosis that's creating the bleeding. Remember, blood and lymph come together interstitially. So I think the thinking is off just a little bit there. Plus I have ordered and waiting for female reproductive, kidney batter 1 caps, kidney batter 2 caps. You're getting a lot of capsules. I would actually go to the tinctures to help that. I really would. Even if you went to the glycerins, I think a little lipids could be helpful in the bleeding of that. Here again is lymphatic system 2 and 3 in caps. Too many capsules, honey. Adrenal gland capsules, too many capsules. Endocrine glands and the glycerin and bleeding. Finally, there's the bleeding formula. But again, you have to correct what's bleeding. Medjool dates, fresh golden mungoman, a little pineapple, fresh banana, coconut, a little coconut water. I love those smoothies. The oncologist insists that I have hysterectomy as soon as possible, and that it is a mistake to hope that the body will self-heal with natural remedies. Well, I understand from his point of view that, but from our point of view, we correct what causes this and heal this up. Now, I'll have to tell you, you want to pull your eyes there and see if you can see the uterine area, because if you have atrophy or you have decay, there's a certain point of what I call PNR, a point of no return. And you want to be smart about your life and about that. So with that said, you wanted to see the degree. I think when you're at this level, you have to hook with a counselor here to help you. Because I work with the counselors all the time. So if they can't help you, they'll come to me with the problem. What do I do if it's beyond their capacity to do it? But I have training sessions here as much as I can and work with them. But you want to touch with somebody here to put you on the right path with the herbals, because you got way too many capsules here, and I would be douching with the Heal All Tea. but I'd have been on the bleeding formula a long time ago. I'd also been up, I wouldn't have been doing the female reproductive calves, but I would be going after that lymph system, and I'd be hitting your kidneys hard a long time ago. And give you a little maybe bone and connective just to help strengthen on top of that, little anti-bleeding factors with that as well. But you want to make sure that the uterus is regeneratable, and I say that in that some things with a lot, and all I can, I'm going to show you. Okay. Remember, this is an educational video, and I'll try to hide some of this. All right. Okay, so that's a breast that was, and it is no more. The lady had fairly large breasts, and she let all this acid eat her breasts off. If your uterus looks like that, you can stop it and start to, it'll take you a lot of time to regenerate it, but sometimes when things are too bad and few things, you have to remove it. Remove that tissue because it's so necrotic and so advanced that it compromises the body in those local tissues around it. So you've got to weigh that out and look at that. I don't want to believe in such treatment, but I am afraid, will I manage to get well? Well, the problems with removals of things is removal of lymph nodes, and the removal of lymph nodes that are not related to those tissues, because your lymph nodes around any area like that's going to be swollen. That's just a natural thing because the kidneys are the problems. Well, the problem with that is that they see a swollen lymph node as the problem, and removing that lymph node will help, when by now they know damn well that it does just the opposite. It compromises, and lymphedema fills the body, and that's the biggest concern there is these stupid surgeons. Some are very good, and their intentions are good, but their intentions are steeped in unconsciousness. And therefore, by removing too many lymph nodes, then they've compromised the patient, and their life becomes a living hell, and they end up dying anyway. Yeah, you never remove septic tanks to tissues that are already there and is going to be there. Yeah, your septic tanks are swollen. Understand why. And that goes back to the eliminative organs. The lymphatic system is not a closed system like the blood. There's not an eliminative organ for the blood. It'd bleed anywhere. But the lymphatic system has eliminative organs just like the digestive tract. Wherever you have wastes that need to be removed, you have eliminative organs to remove them. If it doesn't fit in current A and P, it's just because A and P is not up there yet. You know, anatomy physiology doesn't know everything, and it's like Pat will tell you, and she's been an A and P professor going on 20 years now, plus she's been through medical school. Every day, every week, new information comes out. Things they didn't know before, things they thought and things they were teaching were wrong, and now they understand more. That's the nature of this world, though. Can't blame anybody for that. But it's a level of, there's always a level of unconsciousness in creation. It has to be that way, because as you awaken and become conscious, your journey's got to be over. You can't stand it anymore. Because in the awakened state, it's high ecstasy and joy and bliss, and when you're down in the show, not so much. So you have to determine where you are on that, whether you have a hysterectomy or not. But again, mostly the ovaries, in my opinion, is a closed house. If you have a hysterectomy and you don't remove the ovaries tend to, is what I see, deteriorate, because they don't, their function is part of their function is gone. I think when you get into vaginal wall estrogen, you get into adrenal estrogen. And this is another part of her thing. She's 36 years old. She's vegan for the last 8 years. A year ago, last June, I was diagnosed with anemia due to excessive vaginal bleeding during my period. See, and right there, you ladies that have excessive bleeding know that you're highly acidic. And that when you're highly acidic in those areas, do something about them. And that goes for all of us, because bleeding is a representation of acidosis. And, destruction can follow that. My ultrasound showed a chocolate cyst on the left ovary and a uterine submucosal fibroid, 2.5 centimeters. At the same time, the only thing I could do was take an iron supplement along with following a raw vegan diet for 2 months. See, and then you get into the iron, you realize iron is metabolized by the adrenals. The adrenals are always involved. So you just start seeing all these problems here. Taking iron supplements could lead you into iron toxicity. You get into all that sort of thing. She followed a raw vegan diet for 2 months, hoping I would make them go away and stop my heavy periods. Not on a raw vegan. This is why I preach the fruits. You got to kick it up to the top of the mountain. Plus, it's another reason why I love botanicals, because you can accelerate what you're trying to achieve with botanicals. They're incredible. Also, from September 1st, started bleeding continuously until now. Her father, health deteriorated with last stage Parkinson's. And that's another thing. When you look at your family tree, you want to look, you're a genetic offspring of that. So you really want to pay attention to what creates these sort of problems. Same thing, it creates neurological problems like brain lesions and all that. The failing of the cerebellum, that creates everything else as well. Remember, the body's just a bunch of cells, the spaces around them, and the two fluids that occupy that. You can argue some chemistry and water, yes. Keep it simple. So after visiting a bunch of doctors, I had a laparoscopic surgery in order for the ovarian cyst and fibroid to be removed. During the surgery, however, they discovered that the fibroid was not solid, as it should be, and could not be removed entirely. They wondered whether it had degenerated. Duh. The process is from acute, subacute, chronic, and degenerative. In other words, there are stages to this whole process. End stage, deterioration, degenerative. Life's going back to the atomic structure again. And acids play a vital role in making that happen. But that's birth, life, and death. Whether it's of the organism or of a cell or whatever, all life goes through that. And I call it the atom rearrangement game. Playing the Lego game in creation. That's how it works. And acids play a vital role in that. Understanding that, and understanding that foods are either acid ash or forming foods, or alkaline ash forming foods, and realizing most vertebrates have to consume alkaline ash foods, even the omnivores. The surgeon afraid of metastasize wants me to have without delay a radical hysterectomy, including ovaries, pelvic lymph nodes. See, and that's there lies the problem. It's one thing to remove the ovaries and the uterus, and I'm not making light of that, but okay, if you're in extreme fear and an extreme situation, but you only had a 2.5 centimeter there, and it was a pliable fibroid, which means it would be a lot easier to move out naturally than if it was hard as a rock. Those things that become hard as a rock is what you don't want. The fact that it was pliable is great, but they don't understand the difference, I suppose. And that this would have totally been in your in your positive side. And I know people are hopeful when they go to raw vegans, but we went into raw foods, high vegetables over fruits. I've always been a fruitarian understander. I've always understood and loved that level because I knew humans were frugivores, not herbivores. We do not match a herbivore in our limbs, in our teeth, in our function of our jaws, in our GI tract. We do not match herbivores. And those are your vegetable eaters. Those are your elephants and your rhinoceros. And even though these all can be trained in gentle beasts, except for maybe the rhinos, but little baby rhinos can be trained. You can train all of these gentle beasts, horses, cows, all these things like that. When you start getting it, even the omnivores can be, look at the dogs, and hogs can train them. You can train bears, all types of things. Carnivores a little harder. You can train cats. That was what the America's Got Talent had, a cat lady on there that trained her cats to do a lot of things. And that's amazing because cats are a little more difficult. But there's this on YouTube where this guy walking a lion that was almost bigger than he was. Huge lion. Tame. But anyway, if you choose not to do these things, let me see, I don't want to go to early menopause and to be dependent on drugs for hormones and osteoporosis. Well, when you fix these things, you're not dependent on anything like that. And besides, ovarian estrogen and progesterone is really for uterine function, not systemic. You have ovarian estrogen and progesterone that's more systemic, and then you have 2 or 3 other estrogens, liver estrogen, fat cell estrogen, that sort of thing. But, so I consider that a closed house. Sometimes they'll put you on these bioidentical steroids and it messes you up. And people have low steroid problems and stuff after hysterectomy. Hello, to have a hysterectomy, what gland, the major gland of producing steroids, is always involved? Thank you. The adrenal glands. And that's where you get the predominance of systemic steroids, is your adrenal glands. Well, they're always low. And the proof of that, go back to her blood pressure, 90/60. 90/60 tells you right away your adrenals. But we know that, first because I've been educating you on it, but the adrenal gland sits on top of the kidneys. The kidneys are the eliminative organs of the lymphatic system. So the adrenals are not just sitting there looking pretty. Sodium potassium pump, everything else that relates to kidney function is also dealt with through the adrenal glands. They're amazing. And I don't think we know close to all the functions that they do in helping the kidney to perform. And then, of course, you have the pituitary on top of all of this. And going back to her low thyroid function, is there also a pituitary involvement with that? Well, how are you going to know it unless, first of all, you see her monthly cycles are irregular, her height, all this sort of thing. You can look at that, but the eyes tell you. And that's where she wants to get a picture. And she does have her pictures here, and I'll show you. I've showed you on the other video, but what'd she do with them? She didn't give them back to me. Hang on 2 seconds. Hey, sweetheart. On this one case, the bleeding case, you have her eyes, because I know I gave them back in the original, but I wanted to show them. I showed them on that one that didn't go through, right? Oh, I did? So they came through. Are we going to use that portion then? Oh, he has that part up? Okay, good. Thank you. Front door's open. Okay, bye. Well, I think it's already up on the video, but she's sitting in her eyes with this, so let's take a look at them. Hard to read them because they're so out of focus. All right, so pretty much that's where we are in that. So there's some questions that she has, so let's go through these questions. It's been a month since my surgery. I still have some bleeding every day. Oh, did she go through the surgery? After watching your videos, I decided to try the Fruitarian way of living as an ultimate solution. I brought your book today and I received the reproductive and the lymph 3 formulas as well as the Heal All treatment. Did she have her surgery? Because here she says,
that's a good question.
It's been a month since my surgery.
I'm imagining so.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Okay, yeah, these are the ones I remember them.
Yeah.
Quite. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
I still have some bleeding every day, and my lower abdomen is really bloated almost all the time. However, light I eat. 7 oranges for breakfast, 2 or 3 mangoes for lunch, and a bunch of cherries for dinner. I can't stop wondering which organ causes this fullness there. Note that my bowels are moving 1 to 2 times a day. So I don't know whether this lady has had the surgery or not. I mean, she does say it's been a month since my surgery. That's the problem with these things. And I understand the undue fear with surgeries. And the problem I have is getting to your questions through the YouTube here fast enough to help you maybe avoid that. So when if you have a problem, I say this over and over again, contact the club. Get in the club and get going this way, because you're going to get better help. The cost is minimal. It's nothing to join the club, but an appointment for a couple $100 for me to write you up a protocol and all that. That ain't nothing. Not in a situation like this. And so, you want to look at this now. Again, they removed lymph nodes. So if she had the surgery, they removed a lot of lymph nodes. She could have some lymphedema in her. She has all that tissue around the uterine, the GI tract tissue, all kinds of things. You don't know if they had to cut her uterus off her colon, because in that high level of acidosis like this, remember I told you, a lot of the uteruses weld themselves to the bowel wall. Acids weld. So, I mean, all of this is frightful, and then they would have to cut that and damage that tissue. You see, you want to get on the bleeding for me and go down that road. Okay, here's the question. Do you think I have a chance in healing, keeping my body's integrity? Asking the wrong guy. Of course I do. You have no choice but get more aggressive. Get on that Fruitarian level, get in that high. And she mentions that. I don't have anyone here good enough to consult naturopath and the like. The word cancer makes people surrender to a whole system. That's right. That's why you contact the club. And we're here for you, but we can't be by your side, unfortunately. But we're here as close as the videos, as close as the phone call, and close as the Skype. Being anemic as I am, is there any risk in following a strict fruitarian diet without any supplements? No, but, if you've already had the surgery, you got to get your kidneys to filter. I mean, you can use a a green drink of alfalfa juice, fresh alfalfa juice. Start growing your own alfalfa sprouts and make them real dark green before you juice them. That can be helpful, and it is somewhat astringent when you get a really, really dark chlorophyll. It is somewhat astringent. But you really want to hunk up on that lymph system. And try this new 3-lung tincture. Woo! One lady back there that works for us, she said, I tried it, and I've always had this cough, and then I got this little thing in my throat, and she said I never could get mucus out, and now it's pouring out, and I'm going, good formula. Yep. Anyway, stuff like that. Anything to get your lymphatic system moving. But the adrenal glands is another reason why you're anemic. Where does the body metabolize iron? Not the liver. Metabolism of minerals requires steroids, mineralocorticosteroids, which come from the adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands are looking at 90 over, means very low. And that's where you get into sugar metabolism problems. And they're diagnosing you with type 2 or type 1. Always have the adrenal glands involved in any sugar metabolism problems, even with the connective link of, let's say, insulin. Since I started to detox, I cut out all of them, iron, B complex, magnesium. Well, here's the problem. Magnesium has a twin sister. You can't take the minerals. B complexes, water solubles, okay, but the magnesium and antagonistic to calcium, but at the same time, brother and sister. I had only started them due to the anemia because they were all on the downside. Oh, I bet. You can't have any problem, really, if you think about this. You can't have any symptom without having the kidney and adrenal involvement. Well, I have a problem with following the strict fruitarian diet. I don't know, will you? You're not telling yourself it's forever, but you really have to get focused for 6 months or so. Absolutely. If I keep going to office work, as one side effect is low energy, well, that's not a side effect of a fruitarian diet. It's a side effect of a diet that has no stimulants in it. The Fruitarian diet is the highest electrical diet that you can follow when it comes to the electricity of foods. The highest. It is so the least energetic demanding. In other words, when you have a salad, your body has an extensive amount of digestion involvement. When you have fruit, you have a lot less digestive involvement, and everything is energetic. So when you're spending a lot of energy digesting your fruit or your vegetables over a fruit, you have less energy for the body to detoxify and heal itself. Everything's an energetic experience. So if you look at it this way, the body uses energy management like we do time management. There's an unlimited energy for metabolism and everything to happen. That's why the adrenals are vital in neurotransmitter production, and you're low in that. So the nervous system is low, the autonomic in its function of assisting in digestion and all of these things. Remember, we talked about type 1 diabetes can be a neurological type 1. The neurological system controls the movement of tissue as well. So it can not only be a lymphatic suppressive, but it can be a neurological suppressive. Remember I told you the case of the lady that had knee surgery for the 4th time and she came out as a type 1 and she stopped menstruating. The Michael Jackson effect. Propofol is a neural toxin, a neural suppressive. Once we got a nervous system back, all those went away. The reason you have low energy to go to work is your adrenal glands, and we talked about that. When you tap in and you get those adrenal glands fixed on a fruitarian diet, you're going to call me and go, how do I get rid of this energy? I've got gals calling me, how do I get rid of this energy? I got way too much. That was my problem. I got way too much. I can't stay in my body. So it isn't the fruitarian diet that makes you weak, not the fruits, but it removes inflammation, it removes acidosis, which are stimulants. We use protein as stimulants. I gotta have protein, man, I have no energy. That's because you have low adrenal function, low kidney function from the proteins, and you gotta have more, like feeding an ulcer. And when you stop the protein, I gotta have protein, I have no energy. No, you're feeling the effects of no stimulants, the reverse effect. Innervation. That's what man doesn't realize. He's pumped up on proteins with all the meats and all this sort of thing. And then he wonders when he comes off why he's so tired. And then he blames the fruit for it. Or the vegetables. No, not even close. At least in the beginning. We're working 4 hours per day, 5 days a week. I just want to say this to you. You're filtering a little bit according to your other thing, okay, but you want to filter before you kick up activity. Because just because you've removed, let's suppose she's removed the uterus and ovaries and all that. Did that fix the problem? No. Removing lymph nodes in the pelvic area fixed the problem? Could have exacerbated the problem. So, not to be fearful or throw crap out there, but you've got to face truth. Man has to face the truth. And I love to tell the truth. You just got to man or woman up and realize what's going on out there. And grab this information and learn and grow from it where you're not a victim of this insane system. With that said, this insane system of allopathy can help you. Emergency medicine can definitely help you. Spend a lot of years doing that. A good surgeon can definitely help you. But in terms of health and treating diseases, they're killers. Can't do that. So you have to understand where allopathy is their finest, which is surgery, microsurgery, incredible stuff. I mean, some of these surgeons are beyond belief. But in the treatment of diseases, which is a fabrication of the medical mind, can lead you to hellville real quick. It's one thing to have tissue removed and then you reclean and rebuild and fix the reason why, and it's another thing to treat that. All right, I'm already on a strict fruitarian diet for 2 weeks, and there are days that I don't feel very energetic. Well, then relax. Go to bed. Get your adrenals charged up. Quit stressing your adrenal glands. Fix them. Fix your kidneys and adrenals. Use a glandular if you have to, or get into licorice root, especially this low blood pressure. You're going to be on an adrenal formula and licorice root. Get that blood pressure up. Get those neurotransmitters up to at least 115. I am also sending you 2 photographs of my eyes, which unfortunately aren't very clear, no kidding, because the resolution of my mobile phone is only 2 megapixels, and they would come out blurred. I hope they're somewhat helpful. Well, I'll let you guys be the judge. Very blurry. I can't hardly read them. But do you notice one thing? Look at the brown, but also the light. It is hard with this eye to tell you whether you have blue or not, but let's assume she has brown eyes. The lightest brown you see in that picture, that's her true color. Look at the dark brown in all these places. That dark brown is chronic lymph stagnation, and mostly it's around the pupil. What's around the pupil? The GI tract. And that uterus is probably welded to that. Now, from what I can see here, you have a very chronic uterine and vaginal wall. I'm going to guess that you're somewhere, and that's a guess, somewhere between a subacute and chronic in the vaginal wall. So you want to douche with Herbal tea. All you ladies should do that for the fun of it anyway. Clean and strengthen, clean and strengthen, clean and strengthen. Adrenals are chronic lymphatically. I can't see the kidneys very well. The leg or groin is chronic in that way. I get up here, gallbladder, liver looks at least chronically lymphatically, and it looks like you have some genetics in that. I'm looking at a right hip or right pancreatic area. I'm looking at tonsils or thyroid on the right side. That could be thyroid. I have to measure this out. Let's see real quick here if I can see here. Also, skin is obvious. All right, I'm going to call it chronic thyroid right side, probably why your basals are so low. And so that also extends into chronic parathyroid on that side as well. You got to deal with that. Looking on the left side, the upper femur, groin area, chronic, adrenals heavily chronic, uterine chronic, and bladder wall chronic. Vaginal wall, more evidence of chronic, or that is rectal wall. Down around the ankle, you have a chronic lower leg there. I'll submit to you the spleen has some chronic lymphatic issues with it as well. I can't see up here too much with this sort of thing. Looks like the upper lobe of the left lung. You have 2 lobes on the left side, 3 on the right. Looks like the upper or mid lobe of those 2 are involved a little bit. Looks like you have a lot of brown up in the sinuses and stuff like that. Definitely a chronic skin ring. See that ring around her eye there? That's the skin. So that means the 3rd kidney's down. So that's about all I can see out of this eye here, the best I can do for you. So not knowing whether she's had surgery or not, it looks like apparently she has. Which, you know, you can't blame anybody. When you're heavy bleeding and freaking out and your oncologist is telling you if you don't get it you're going to die and you're going to have cancer all through you. That's a different story. But you want to go after this. Understand, when you go on this raw food diet and these high fruitarian levels, you're on a high energy diet. When you look at the electromagnetic energy output of a raw food versus a cooked food, highly significant. Example of vegetables around 9,000 angstroms versus 1,000 cooked. A fruit is going to be up about 12,000 or more, so a lot more. Add to that the digestive loss of energy difference. So you're going to pop that fruit energy way on up above a vegetable, not only originally because it's a higher vibrational food, but also the energy involved in its metabolism and digestion is lower. And that's what you're looking for. That's why fruitarian life is the closest to fasting there is, in the sense that you're getting food that feeds your body energy, digestive loss is minimal, and therefore and of course it's electrolyte rich, so you have hydration as opposed to dehydration. So that's where you're going to follow that way. Yeah, low energy factors, of course, can come into play, but